Ooh, this is exotic. Muscle Cat Media. Nice. Cultural.
Back on the baseball expats, or whatever it is we call it when there's only two of the three of us here, because that's the case this week. From memory, I think we just changed the vowel on Pats from an A to something else. The voice you hear on the other side is in fact Spoon, because Eric is away covering the Australian Women's Baseball Championship, so we won't hear from him for a week or so, but look, the show must go on, and Spoon is fronted up, as he always does, the ultimate blue guy, as we have called him for the last 18 months. Spoon, how are you?
Very well, mate, and it's turning into a little bit of a trend that Tuesday seems to be a really good day for me on the baseball punt. Those who followed along today would have had a fruitful 6 units of profit, and nearly 8 if Christopher Sanchez got one more strikeout. But yeah, things are going well, albeit it hurts when you know your team well enough, like I do the D-backs, to never really bet their win and just bet their team total, because they can score 5 runs, they can score 7 runs, but a 7-1 lead is not safe, as we found out today. And I was in the D-back subreddit afterwards, and everyone was like, you know, you're well conditioned to Arizona baseball when this doesn't blow your mind anymore. You just go like, it happened again, and then you just move on. Because a 6-run lead for most teams would be in the books, but for us, it's just when the game gets started.
Yeah, there were so many crazy games today. Look, I mean, it's a long season. There's no need for us to go back and harp on them too much. But I mean, you mentioning that D-backs Orioles game where the O's scored 8 runs in the final 4 innings, including 5 in the 6th, when you guys were leading. What I believe it was it 7-1 at one point?
7-1. Yeah, Nolan Arenado hit his second home run, which they should be worth 2 as it is, given how his bat started. And that clearly wasn't enough. Cattell hit probably 1,000 feet worth of home runs as well.
As close as I've seen anybody coming to hitting the warehouse since Griffey did it in that home run derby many moons ago. Look, that Pirates-Nationals game was outrageous, 16-5 the final score, but maybe the craziest game of all was in the Bronx, an 11-10 final. Yankees break a 5-game losing streak. They do so on an elite closer, and they do it on a walk-off wild pitch.
Yeah, that was a crazy one. I'm wearing my Mike Trout jersey today because he gave the Angels every possible chance. He hit 2 home runs. I think he tied the game, and then he put them up with 2 shots. But the problem is he didn't have enough help. And when what he's doing at the plate is being matched by Trent Grisham off the bench, the lineups are kind of a little bit mismatched there. So it was your comment today in the chat, but prayers for Mike Trout, whose career is truly being wasted.
It is so crazy to think, and I said it a bit tongue-in-cheek, but it's crazy to think that someday we'll be telling our kids that Mike Trout, Albert Pujols, and Shohei Ohtani all played together on the same team, and that team wasn't very good. How's that possible?
And they threw a heap of money at Anthony Rendon, who was coming off like a very good season. Like that 1-4, 1-5, Taylor Ward was putting up like 4 or 5 WAR seasons for a while. They were calling him Taylor Ward with a capital WAR. And they could never really get the pitching figured out. And to be fair, I mean, they've had, Jose Soriano, his start to the season is the best start by an Angel starting pitcher in 30 years or something like that. He's allowed 1 earned run in 4 starts. Reed Detmers has been really good. It just seems like, I don't know, they're kind of zigging when they need to zag and zagging when they need to zig, but it's tough. It's tough for the Angels. I would love to see him do well.
Yeah, look, it's not the end of the world. I mean, obviously, what Joe Adele did last week with those 3 home run robberies was exciting. Jorge Soler is always exciting. I mean, he's been great defensively. We won't see him for the next week after that brawl that happened in the middle of last week. But it brings me to another point, because and I know you want to talk about a few teams that are bad, but the standings are as condensed as I can remember us seeing to the first 3 weeks of a baseball season. I mean, essentially 6 games separates the best team in baseball, being the Dodgers, to a few of the worst teams in baseball at 6-10 or 6-11. Speaking of the White Sox, the Astros, and the Rockies, all within a half game of each other. But if you sort of remove the Dodgers from that equation, there's only 4 games difference between the top of the league and the bottom of the league all the way across. It's 29 teams separated by 4 games. Can you remember a season that's been, I guess, so even? And again, look, this is why the baseball season is long, because eventually that's going to stretch out. And the good teams are going to rise to the top and the bad teams are going to become more and more evident. But it does seem like things are a little bit bunched early, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think what's interesting, and I'll talk about a couple of these teams in a minute, but I think you've got some surprise packages kind of bolting out of the gates. Like the Fish. Okay, they've dropped a few recently, but they're still above 500. They haven't been above 500 2 weeks into the season for a very long time. The Pirates are 10-6. The Reds are 9-7. And on the other side of that coin is some teams like the Cubs, the Mets, the Astros, the Blue Jays, who are all well under 500. So I think that's where you're getting that sort of consolidation of the standings coming from. I feel like there's some seasons where you get one or two of those, but not like 4 or 5 on both sides of the spectrum.
Yeah, well, I mean, I asked last week if the Pirates are fun, and they're continuing to be fun, right? I mean, that's a team that is sort of at the opposite end of that spectrum, right? Where you get a lot of these teams that are expected to do well, but so many of these teams, like the Marlins that you're talking about, being the Pirates, they're in the same division, but it's hard for me not to be a bandwagon Pirates fan, like we talked about last week, 10-6 through their first 16 games. And look, I know last week you raised a few alarm bells with the Red Sox being one of those teams. I mean, they went to St. Louis and took 2 of 3, which isn't difficult. St. Louis dropped another one to Cleveland at home today, but there's still some other teams out there. And I mean, the Giants were the other one that we sort of noted last week. But when it comes to teams that are really firing off alarm bells and teams that you're seeing that are bad and pretty obvious reasons for why they're bad, who are those teams that are sort of sticking out to you?
Yeah, so I mean, I've declared the Giants and Red Sox dead, so I'm just going to refuse to cover their failures anymore. If they do turn things around, I'll take my.
We will have to have a special resurrection episode, I suppose, if either one of those teams
we've
goes
already
on
missed Easter, so I'm not sure when they're going to do that. But
next Easter 2027. Who knows when that is? It could be in February for all we know.
Yeah, I don't want to pile on the hurt for 2 teams I've already declared dead, but I've got a couple of teams that are potentially on life support with some pretty ugly stats to back it up. The Houston Astros have scored more runs than anyone in baseball, and they have the worst record in baseball. And you might ask how that's possible. And how that's possible is because their only good starting pitcher, Hunter Brown, has been shut down for a few weeks. He had an ERA below 1 after 2 really good starts, and he's now been out for a while. So if you look at the 5 other guys who have been starting in that time, Mike Burrows lit up today, ERA above 6. Lance McCullers Jr., who I do really like, but he's kind of found the wobbles again. His commands just dropped right off, and that's kind of biting him. His ERA is just under 6. Christian Javier, I don't know if this is a real injury or one of those like phantom, something's not going right with you injuries, because he had 3 horrible starts. His ERA is over 12.5. Imai, my guy who I put a bit of faith in on last episode, the weekend pickoff, walked 5 guys in his outing last start. Came out and said something weird like the mound is really hard in Seattle and I couldn't get my feet down properly. I don't know if that was like a translation error or that was really the excuse, but his whip's above 2. He's been torched, and Cody Bolton's been torched as well. So yeah, it's pretty ugly right now for the Astros on a pitching standpoint, and even guys coming out of the bullpen, like Brian Abreu, who's been a really important part of that bullpen for a long time. He's been in 6 games this year so far, and he has an ERA of 16.2. That's hard to do, and it's a big enough sample size that it's like alarming. He's walked 11 guys in 5 innings. He's got a whip of 3.6. And Josh Hader's not coming back anytime soon. We don't know the severity of Hunter Brown's injury. I don't know where the pitching improvements are going to come from for Houston, because they were kind of expecting Javier to take the number 2 spot, since they lost Framba and Brown became the ace. Lance McCullers Jr., after years of time off, was meant to be looking good, and he did look really good in his first start, but he's 32 now, and he's had every injury you can have. It's ugly for Houston because the offense has been quite solid. Yordan Alvarez has 6 home runs already, which is great for those playing along with the futures pick. He's got the highest on-base percentage in the league at 500. Christian Walker's been hitting them a long way. Altuve's been good. I mean, like all of these guys there's 5 players in their starting lineup with an OPS plus above 150, and they got the worst record in the league. So are the bats going to keep going and they're still going to be terrible? Because there's not a lot of upside for the offense.
Yeah, look, and just for context, I mean, through, they played 17 games, 6-11, 107 games allowed. When you look at the 2 best teams in terms of runs allowed, so the 2 best pitching stabs in baseball by runs allowed, the Yankees and who else was it? There was somebody else that had only allowed the Braves. The Yankees and Braves have both allowed 54 runs total through these first 3 weeks. It's basically half, which is wild. And I mean, you even compare the Astros to the best team in their division in terms of runs allowed, and it's the Rangers at the top with 56 and the Mariners, who are a game and a half back, at 58. They've allowed almost twice the amount of runs as some of the teams at the top and have only played 17 games. I mean, they've allowed the most in baseball. The only team that's anywhere close to them is the hapless Washington Nationals, who weren't necessarily expected to be anywhere close to the Astros in terms of record at the end of the season. So it's not so much, you're right, the 6-11 record that should be causing alarm bells in Houston. It's the 107 runs allowed, and the fact that even though they've scored 95 runs this season, their differential is still in the minus and double digits in the minus.
Yeah, and that's where, you look at where upside's going to come from. I mean, the bats can't be going much better than they are. Like, Yordan Alvarez gets on base 1 in every 2 times he goes to the plate. There's limited ceiling there. So you're kind of asking like a rotation of 5-6 guys where 5 of those have been awful, and a bullpen of 4 or 5 guys where, the same is true, to all turn it around. Like, even if a couple of these guys kind of turn it around, I'm not sure they're suddenly going to be, looking great. And it brings up a really interesting talking point where, before the season, I loved the Rangers at about 450 to win the division. If you look at the AL West betting now, you've got the Mariners at 210, the Rangers at 320, the Astros at $6, which I think is unders, the Athletics at 9s, which is unders, and then the Angels at 26s, which might be overs. But you're almost looking at probably, I think, out of any of the divisions in baseball, the clearest 2-horse race right now, which is crazy when before the season, the NL Central kind of looked like a foregone conclusion. And, there was questions around if some of these teams in the AL Central would make a step up, and they have. But the AL West is already, I think, one of the more exciting divisions to watch with 150 odd games to go, purely because the Astros are slowly eliminating themselves, and the A's and the Angels weren't really serious contenders to begin with.
I'm just looking at it now, and again, it's early in the season, but if you look at their starting rotation in terms of wins above replacement, and look, they have had 6 guys that have started a game. So if you look at not only their starting rotation, but we'll look at their sort of relief core as well. From a pitching standpoint, they have a WAR of minus 1.3 through 17 games. That's compared to an offensive WAR of 4. I don't know that I've ever seen anything that's strikingly different this early in a season. Like, that's insane. I mean, you look at their rotation, Burrows at the moment, sorry, I keep losing my spot. So if you look at Burrows, for instance, I mean, he's been one of their betters. Lance McCullers has been fine. But I mean, you mentioned Christian Javier in a minus 0.6. Tatsuya Imai, it doesn't feel like he's been all that awful. He's been streaky, and you're right, making weird statements at the end of games and seemingly making excuses. He's under 0. I mean, you've got 3 or 4 guys in that bullpen. I mean, Brian Abreu, who's made 7 appearances out of the bullpen, has got a 16.20 earned run average, an award that's nearly minus 1.0 through 7 appearances. So those are the types of numbers that are not going to stack up. But what do you do if you're Houston?
Yeah, well, I mean, and the BREF data hasn't updated yet for Mike Burrows, but his ERA is now 6.5. He gave up 11 hits today, 6 earned runs, so his ERA is now mid 6.5s. And these guys are going to all of these guys are going to have to make a handful more starts, at least until Hunter Brown and Christian Javier come back. But I mean, Hunter Brown alone can't turn this rotation around. So I guess at what point do you wonder whether these offensive players are brilliant, but you've got Christian Walker at 35, Altuve at 36, Yordan Alvarez is 29, Jake Myers is 30. At what point are a couple of these guys trade pieces because you need to restock the farm, and there's no clear kind of path to a turnaround in 2026?
I think we can both agree on the Houston Astros, Spoon. Who's another team that's caught your eye for all the wrong reasons?
Well, I like it because I like that the Braves are going to win the NL East, which I kind of declared, a couple of months ago. And so far, they're looking really good. A team that's not looking really good is the New York Mets. Look, they're 7-10, which isn't great, but it's how they're 7-10 that is really ringing off alarm bells for me. This is the third time. So bear in mind, they've played 17 games. This is the third time already this season the Mets have had 17 or more scoreless innings. That's a crazy number. Like we've played, 160 innings. They've gone 17 scoreless straight 3 times already. They were shut out today by the Dodgers. They were shut out yesterday by Oakland or Sacramento. And the way in which they're doing it is just alarming. So rookie was up for the A's yesterday, closer, put in a big position, 1-zip, asked to get his first save. And the Mets grounded out 3 times on 4 pitches. Like every guy's going up there trying to be the hero, trying to hit a home run. And there's zero kind of, I use the technical barometer vibes. There's zero vibes around this lineup at all where they're passing the baton on to the next guy. And I guess that's what happens when you have a star-studded lineup full of guys who are, all superstars in their own right, and they're all on big money. But like Francisco Lindor's batting a $170. Bo Bichette's still kind of in and out. His OPS is below 600. Semien's OPS is 520. Soto's on the IL for a couple of weeks. It's pretty ugly offensively. I mean, the starting pitching's been quite solid. Fastball Freddie's been great. Nolan McLean's one of the more exciting starting pitchers, I think, in baseball this year as a young player. David Peterson's kind of in and out. I mean, his ERA jumped above 7 now after today. He gave up 4 earned runs. Our guy, Kodai Senga, has had 2 really good starts and 1 terrible start. So the rotation's kind of like rocks and diamonds. You've got 3 guys really doing their job and 2 not. But the lineup is just ugly from pretty much top to bottom, with the exception, Soto was great in the 8 games he's played, but he's been on the IL for a couple of weeks and he's out for a couple more weeks. And Luis Roberts been really solid with an OPS plus of 163. And Francisco Alvarez as well, OPS plus 189. So you've got 2 guys performing, but 3 or 4 guys who really need to sort it out. And the approach at the dish has been ugly, which was capped off by that 9th inning yesterday against the A's in a 1-0 ball game.
I think it all started going south for the Mets as soon as Gary Cohen shit on the city of St. Louis during the middle of a broadcast, which you shared with me, basically saying that downtown St. Louis was a ghost town. I think since that moment in that broadcast, they're like 4-9 or something. So we just call it the hoodoo of St. Louis. Don't shit on the greatest city in the world and then expect to rattle off a win streak, I guess, is the lesson to be learned.
Yeah, well, it's something I've learned in my many years of baseball betting, not to tempt fate when it comes to the Cardinals. That devil magic it's a real thing.
Does seem like you're one bogey team. For better or for worse, it doesn't make any sense. I've never seen you have a worse bogey team than my St. Louis Cardinals. And just kidding, Gary Cohen, friend of the podcast. You can come on anytime you like. But I did think that was funny. I mean, everybody in St. Louis basically agreed with him. It was supposed to be this jar at St. Louis, and like all I saw in the comments was everybody in St. Louis being like, yeah, we know. We live here. That said, it is early in the year, and springtime in St. Louis can be very chilly, and people don't just tend to walk around downtown St. Louis. I do hope once it gets toward the middle of summer, a lot of people build their pilgrimage in the Midwest around trips to St. Louis. So if that team is, if they continue to be exciting to watch, I think we'll start to see a little bit more activity around downtown St. Louis. Well, because I'm facing a crisis in terms of technology, basically, which I've fought with for weeks and months and even years, we're going to step aside. On the other end, Spoon will give you a couple of tips. The man's been on fire. You want to stick around. Back after this. Spoon, I'm not going to let my technological issues stand in your way. So take it away. What are your best for the midweek slate?
Yeah, so there's a few tomorrow that I'm really keen on, but I'm just waiting to get prices at the moment. So if you haven't already, make sure you check out the Twitter or the Instagram page, because there's going to be some plays I think I really want to lock in on depending on the price. And spoiler alert, one of those is going to be Shane McClanahan as a smash spot if he does get a price I like, because he's playing the White Sox, who are the worst strikeout team in baseball. He's looked really good at times and really average at times so far, but after pushing his start back a couple of days, I think tomorrow is the day Shane McClanahan can get his season going. But that's not an official play because we're going to wait to see what the line is, because this year we've seen some crazy lines already. I'm going to start with the Cubs-Phillies series, which I played today. I played Christopher Sanchez for 7 and 9. He finished on 8, but he struggled in a couple of innings, and if he didn't, I think he could have gone well north of 10. The Cubs are sitting right around the middle of the pack as a strikeout team in 2026, which makes it crazy to me that we're getting even money about over 5.5 for Aaron Nola tomorrow. Now, Nolan's had 3 really good starts so far. He's got an ERA of under 4. It's about 3.5. He struck out 19 in 17 innings of work. And he's arguably one of the few pitchers in baseball who pitched in the World Baseball Classic and has taken some momentum from that into the 2026 season. We've seen guys like Logan Webb struggling. We've seen guys at the plate struggling who were in that World Baseball Classic. But Aaron Nola's been really steady. He struck out 7 Texas Rangers in the first start of the season, followed it up with 9 against the Rockies, which is about 6 when you adjust for, Colorado strikeout tax. And then I was really keen on him last outing against the Giants, where he only struck out 3, but he did go 6 innings of work, and his pitch count's been looking nice. I mean, he's had 2 starts in the 90s already, and length has sometimes been an issue with Nola. If you look at the strike looking and strike swinging totals across the 3 starts, he's gone 31, 28, and 25, and they're all right in the sweet spot for a guy to kind of get 6, 7, and 8. Against the Cubs tomorrow, who were swinging pretty wildly today, especially there were some really ugly ABs from Pete Crow Armstrong, my guy who's struggling to get 30 home runs at the moment. He's struggling to get his second. I think Nola at even money for 6 or more strikeouts is definitely a bet I want to take. So I'm going to lock that one in as my first of 2 tomorrow. Then the second one I've cooked up a little same game multi because thinking that these prices might drop before we get a chance to pile into the Combo K market when it comes out tomorrow. So the way I want to play this, and this is between the Angels and the Yankees, who played one of the craziest games, I think, of the season so far today, that 11-10 wild pitch walk-off that you mentioned earlier. I really like the matchup for both Reed Detmers and Ryan Weathers tomorrow. So if you look at the strikeout numbers for teams on the season, the Angels are 25th in baseball and the Yankees are 26th. So 2 bottom 6 teams as far as K rate is concerned. And these are 2 guys that I've taken a fair bit in the past, and they can generate a lot of swing and miss. If you want to take Reed Detmers and Ryan Weathers to both get 6 or more strikeouts tomorrow, you can get $2.50 about that right now, which I think is great because the way today's game went, a lot of bullpen arms were used from both sides. And you typically see when that happens in the opening game of a series, teams are keen to lean on their starter a little bit more. They might let them have 1 or 2 more outs that they otherwise wouldn't get. And Weathers and Detmers so far seem to be the kind of guys that their managers can trust to go a little bit deeper. And the matchup for both looks positive, as I said. So 6 strikeouts each, Weathers and Detmers in Angels at Yankees at $2.50.
So that was actually 6+ each and not one of those combined markets that you've talked about previously that would be for the 2 to combine for 12. What would that market look like tomorrow?
I'm guessing it's going to be about $1.90 to get 12 plus tomorrow, because you typically lose a little bit of value when you combine them, because obviously there's the higher upside of one guy going crazy. And, one guy, it's happened to me plenty of times. One guy goes out there and gets 3 and the other guy gets 9. So if you're looking at $2.50 about 6 each, I think we're going to see about $1.85, $1.90 for 12 or more. But keep in mind, when these markets drop tomorrow morning, I'm probably going to look at something at 14, 15 at the 354 mark combined as a top-up play. But locking in right now, $2.40 for each to get 6, I think is a really good plus money play.
Do you look at something like that when you do put, because it's probably not often that you put a bet like this on where it's 6+ for both of the guys, because you do tend to like those combined markets just because, like you said, you give yourself that little bit of a lever to pull if one guy's not on and another guy ends up striking out 10. Would you do that in a game like this if you are getting something like $2.50 for 6+ for each of them and getting $1.90 for 12+ total? Would you take that $1.90 just as a safety net, or would you use that combined market to ladder it up?
I think I've got to be really keen on the strikeout matchup for both sides to take this. So if you throw back 14 days ago to the best day of my baseball betting career, the perfect day, a key part of that was Weathers and Castillo 5 or more each at $2.25, Weathers and Castillo 7 or more each at 11s. And I only did that because the Mariners and the Yankees are 2 massive strikeout teams. Even if you look at it now, 2 weeks on, Seattle are 24th, the Yankees are 26th. Tomorrow we've got the Angels at 25th and the Yankees at 26th. I mean, Weathers was part of that play I just mentioned. He's part of tomorrow's play. Where I like the combo K a bit more is where you might have like a B grade pitcher and an A grade strikeout matchup, and you might have an A grade pitcher and a B grade strikeout matchup. Like someone who's playing against Milwaukee or something like that, who may go well but may not. You'll get a much better price if you take both guys, because obviously there's no parachute, so to speak, of one guy dominating and filling up the combo sheet. But the way tomorrow sets up, I think 6 or more for Weathers and Detmers, especially off the bullpen exhaustion we saw today from both teams, looks like a really good bet at 250, because I think it's probably a 180, 185 bet.
And again, our man has definitely been on fire. Not only the epic day that we spoke about a couple weeks ago that you could read about on baseballexpats.com, but he had another good day today, as he talked about at the top of the episode. 6+ units up today. So the plays for Spoon midweek: Aaron Nola versus the Cubs tomorrow, 6+ at $2, and then combined Detmers and Weathers in the Yankees-Angels game, each to get 6 or more, but do keep an eye out for that combined market. Spoon happy to play it upwards of anywhere 13, 14 tomorrow, you think, Spoon?
Yeah, I think so. I think if I'm getting 250, about 6 each as a base, then something around 14, if that's sort of 350, which is what I'm expecting if it's 190 at 12s, that'll be a good little top-up play for another half a unit, because, look, where I liked the Weathers and Castillo at 7 each as a top-up 2 weeks ago, to do the same tomorrow, I'd have to go 8 each for both guys to get a similar price, which I think is too much. But if you're taking, 14, that's 6 for one guy and 8 for the other, which I think is very much within range.
And keep an eye on at Spoon Does Baseball on Twitter, especially, because no doubt our man will be posting his best all throughout the week. Look, with a bit of a shorter episode today, just because my computer is about to explode, so I'm going to go full Peter Gibbons on it, like he goes on the, copy machine in Office Space? I don't know. The kids that listen to this show are probably too young for Office Space. But I'm going to go full Peter Gibbons on my computer and have a new one by Friday. But the good news is we will be back on Friday with the weekend pickoff. Until then, best of luck to you, Spoon. Best of luck to all of those following our man in. Enjoy your week and enjoy your baseball.